the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 20, the 2023 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Congo DR. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin, and this is a continuation of Series 20 on the 2023 African Cup, played in January 2024. We have done a full and short version on the groups and teams, and are now looking at the players of each team. This episode covering Congo DR's players. And I'm a little sad because the shirt I'm wearing in real life is kind of similar to the shade of blue on the flag. And yet on camera, it looks dark blue. So I feel my approximation of their colors here is not that good. Anyway, we forge on. We are doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one here looks at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. And part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. And we think that'll be in early January, just in a couple of weeks here. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we compiled today and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover a couple of other things that I'll talk about at the end of this mediacast. Well, Congo DR is one of the teams that did not reach the 2021 African Cup, so we didn't do a mediacast on their players yet. We'll therefore be doing a full version of the players here, unlike the updated version that we're doing for teams that were part of the previous cup. The difference really is that we give a bit more biographical information on the main players here. Anyway, before we begin, we'll make a brief note on what Soccer Files is doing. We have made a separate video on what we'll be covering over the next 9 months. YouTube watchers can see the link to that on the screen. It can also be found in the show notes for both watchers and listeners. In short, we just completed our series on the groups, teams, and players, part one at least of the Players podcast or mediacast for the 2023 Asian Cup. And having done the groups and teams for the African Cup here, we're almost at the end of completing the players part one of the players for that one. So both of those take place in early January 2024. And besides that, we've also started coverage on World Cup 2026 qualifying, but we'll turn our attention to that more after these tournaments. So this episode will have 3 sections. This introduction, and then section 1, some general information on the team. Section 2, we compile the list of candidates and their likelihood of making it. And then section 3 is just a conclusion. Actually, we're going to have a little bit of fun and predict the starters for the upcoming tournament. We'll also give any closing thoughts and preview part 2. All right, let's begin then. And section 1. Some general information on the team. So as we said, they didn't make the African Cup in 2021. The last time Congo DR made it was the 2019 African Cup. That was the first one that expanded to 24 teams. So in that cup, Congo DR advanced from the group in 3rd place, and then they lost to the darling team, one of the darling teams, Madagascar, having a great run. They lost on penalties to Madagascar in the round of 16. Next, let's look at their recent games. So when we judge the participation of players, we're looking over the past 2 years. So we just want to go through the games that they have played over the past 2 years and actually tell you which ones we're counting and which ones we're not. So they had one February in February 2022. Sorry, they had one friendly in February 2022. So that's the first one that we go from. In March of 2022, they actually had World Cup 2022 qualifiers there. That was the playoff. So Congo DR did well to reach the final playoffs. However, they lost and did not reach the World Cup. So 2 games there, home and away against Morocco. And next in June of 2022, they had the first round of qualifiers for this Cup. That's the African Nations Cup in 2023 qualifying game. So 2 games in June there. A little later, African Nations Cup qualifiers in August and September 2022. We don't count those, and I'll tell you why shortly. In September 22, a couple of friendlies, and then in January of 2023, the actual Nations Cup. The African Nations Championship, the final tournament there. The previous summer, they were qualifying games for that. In March of 2023, I should say, we had the next 2, so games 3 and 4 of their 6 games for African Nations Cup qualifying. And in June, they had a friendly as well as the 5th game for African Nations Cup qualifying. And they completed that qualification with a game in September 2023. And of course, they qualified. That's why we're talking about them. They had 3 friendlies in September, 1 in September and 2 in October. And then finally in November 2023, they began World Cup 2026 qualifying with their first 2 games there. So we tend to focus a little more on the qualifiers. Sometimes the friendlies can be a bit experimental, but we do count them in the players' participations. The ones in grey, if you're looking at the YouTube feed, the ones in grey, the African Nations Championship qualifiers and final games, we do not count because they tend to not send their top players. In fact, the eligibility for that is that you have to be playing in Africa. So most of their top players are not even available for that. I did see the goalkeeper and maybe 1 or 2 other players from the senior team that we expect to be in the upcoming cup. I did see a couple of names there, but most of them are not. So we don't count them in the games of qualifying. And so we don't count them in the games to judge their participation. And there we have it. We're not really interested in the results of those games here, but we're a bit more interested in the formations that they use. So as we talk about it, I'd like you to envision the formation. So they seem to alternate between 2, a 4-4-2 formation or a 4-2-3-1 formation. They're not that different. Both have 2 central defenders and a right back and a left back. Both of them have 2 central midfielders as well. And then up at the top, it becomes a bit different. The 4-4-2 has wingers and 2 forwards, whereas the 4-2-3-1 has a right and left attacking midfielder and just 1 forward. But, generally they're not that much different, especially at the back. Okay, that is the information we want to give. Oops, I actually forgot to copy that information. So there we go, a 4-4-2, a 4-2-3-1. Let's move on to the main part of the podcast where we, I keep saying podcast, but I should say mediacast. I'm trying to train myself. Okay, the main part where we look at the candidates and their likelihood of making it. So let's begin with the manager situation here. And we have been going back to a bit further in the past for this one. So we begin with Hector Cooper, who is manager of the team. No, sorry, I was wrong. We begin with Florent Ibenge, who is manager of the team from I'm getting a bit lost here. From 2014 to 2019. So, as we'll see when we get to the kind of narrative summary, he managed them through a few tournaments. After that, we had Hector Cooper a little while after that. And both of those are gone because now the current manager is Sebastian de Sabre or de Sabre. So let's look at the narrative and make sense of all of this. So Florent Ibenge not only guided them through the 2019 African Cup, their last one, but through the 2015 and 2017 editions also. And actually in 2017, he had announced that he would step down in 2018. So he was well overdue when he did so in 2021. And that was after they failed to qualify for the 2021 African Cup. That cup taking place in January 2022. So Cooper came in, Hector Cooper, and led them through World Cup qualifying for the 2022 World Cup. And they did well there, as we saw, reaching the final playoff. He wasn't dismissed for that. Although the Wikipedia page actually says that he was, but he actually was dismissed for losing the first two games of African Cup 2023 qualifying, those games in June 2022. So a disappointing start to their qualification for this cup. De Sabre came in and won all four remaining qualification games, earning them a place in the cup here. So a bit of an interesting story there. And of course, Cooper was blamed for losing the first two games. We could blame De Sabre for being very experimental in their last game here. That is the game against Sudan, the World Cup qualifying game against Sudan in November. They ended up losing that game in Sudan on an own goal at 79. But we're going to see as we go through the players that, that selection of players and positions really was a bit odd. And so it makes us wonder if they might think of changing De Sabre before the tournament here, because it was just a strange lineup. As we'll see, we'll go through and you'll see. Okay, let's move on to goalkeepers. So we're going to begin by listing the candidates and their likelihood. If you see their name in light grey, as you do with our definite candidate, Lionel Mpasi, that means they have not been through a tournament. And if their name is in a black script, it means they have. So Lionel Mpasi, the definite candidate here, and we have a likely candidate in Baggio Siadi. I believe he did play in those African Nations Championship games. And we have a possible candidate in Dimitri Bertol. And then we have a couple of players who are possible but not but unlikely. So the first one is Joel Kiasambua, I should say, and Idris Kabamba. And finally, we have a couple of players off the list. I'll just mention them by name, but I won't put them on the list. We have Parfait Mandanda, and he was substitute keeper in the 2019 African Cup. We have Lay Matampi. He was the starting keeper in the 2019 African Cup. And then we have Anthony Mossy, another substitute in the 2019 Cup. So all of those are off the team. Mandanda last appeared in October 2021. Matampi in January 2021. And Mossy in October 2020. So all of them played after the African Cup, but not for that long. And the only veteran of a tournament we have here is Joel Kiasambua. He didn't play in the 2019 African Cup, but he did. Was a substitute in the 2017 edition. So basically all new goalies here. Let's take a look at them, beginning with definite candidate Lionel Mpasi. So he started 7 of their 18 senior games over the past 2 years, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 8, and not selected for 2 others. So Lionel Mpasi, almost always called up. And I'll just quickly say that the 18 senior games means that we did not include the African Nations Championship matches in this count. So Lionel Mpasi, not necessarily a starter, but a definite candidate to make the team. He did start 6 of the last 7, though. Okay, next we have Baggio Siadi, and he started 2 of their 18 games over the past 2 years and was on the bench for 10, but not selected for 6 matches. So those 2 starts he got were friendlies. It seemed like at least one of them was in preparation for the African Nations Championship there. So he was not the replacement in the most recent friendly. So even though he's a likely candidate, we think he's probably the 3rd string keeper. The possible candidate, Dimitri Berthaud, plays for Montpellier in France. Siadi plays in Congo DR. Mpasi plays for Rodez in France. Maybe I should mention the club that they play for. So Berthaud, been with the team since 2023. So he got his first cap in October 2023 and actually started 1 of the 3 remaining games and was on the bench for 3 others. So kind of a late applicant here, but we think he looks like he might be the 2nd string keeper. Joel Kiasambua, we won't give a lot of information on him. I said he was part of the 2017 African Cup. He started 7 of the 18 games over this period, but then was not selected for 11 others, including the last 8 matches. So it looked like he was the starting keeper there for a while, but now is not, is unlikely even to make the tournament. The other unlikely candidate is Estras Kabamba. Looked like they tried him out. He was called up in June 2023 on the bench for 4 matches and then not selected for the last 4. So an unlikely candidate. We think he was kind of tried and then discarded. And it looks like I forgot to add Estras Kabamba to the list here, so I'll just put him on. And then we'll review the list. So we have definite candidate Mpasi, likely candidate Siadi, newcomer and possible candidate Berthaud, Kisuamba, Joel Kisuamba as a possible but unlikely candidate, and also fairly new Estras Kabamba, a possible but unlikely candidate, quite unlikely, I would say. Let's now summarize the position in a narrative. So all 3 players in the 2019 African Cup are gone, all 3 keepers. Joel Kiasambua played the 2 2022 World Cup qualifying games, the playoff games there, as well as the first 2 African Cup qualifying games. Despite losing both of those, he continued under the new manager and he started the next 2 African Cup qualifying games. However, Kisambua's time was up, it seemed, and he was replaced by Mpasi for the last 2. Mpasi played all games after that except for 1. That was 3 friendlies and both 2026 World Cup qualifiers in November. The 1 friendly he missed, he was replaced by newcomer Berthaud. So Mpasi seems a clear starter here, but the backup is unclear. We have Baggio Siadi, who's been around for longer. Dimitri Berthaud just coming in new, but getting the start in the friendly there. And I wouldn't rule out Joel Kiasambua. They could bring him along for his experience. Okay, let's move on to the defense and central defenders, and we'll just look at the candidates here. So we have definite candidate Chancel Mbemba. He's actually coded as a defensive midfielder, but from 2019 onwards, he's been playing more as a central defender, almost exclusively, actually. And the next candidate is at the likely level. It's Henok Ingonga Baka. But I see him called Inonga more than anything. So I'm going to go with that name, Inonga. We have two possible candidates. The first one is Dylan Batu Binsika, and the next one, Rocky Bushuri. We also have possible but unlikely candidate Arsene Zola. And then we have four players seemingly off the squad. I'll just name them, but I'll only talk about one of them. Kevin Mondeko, Christian Luyendama, Bobo Ungenda, and the one I'll talk about is Marcel Tisserand. Briefly, Marcel Tisserand was a starter in the previous cup. He actually has he's only 30 years old, so there is a chance of him coming back. He has taken a drop in his club affiliations, moving from Fenerbahce in Turkey to Etivac in Saudi Arabia since 2022 there. And 2022 was the last time he appeared for the senior team in June of 2022. So Marcel Tisserand seemingly off the squad. Let's look at the candidates who look more likely to make it. Chancel Mbemba has been with the team since 2012 with 74 caps and 4 goals. He's 29 years old, so still a few years in him. And he plays for Marseille in France. He has a very good resume. He also played for Porto in Portugal till 2022 and with Newcastle in England before that. So as I say, a good resume internationally too, because he's been part of the African Cup since 2013, on the bench there, but in 2015, 17 and 19 he was a starter. Over the past 2 years, Mbemba has started 10 of their 18 games and was on the bench for 2, but not selected for 6 matches. However, we consider him a definite candidate, really, just because of his resume. There would be a bit shocking if they didn't bring him. All right, the next one is in Ingonga, a likely candidate. He returned after a 13-month absence in September 2022 and started 7 of their remaining 12 games. Was on the bench for 4 and just 1 match that he wasn't selected for. So Ingonga we consider a likely candidate. So he's been with the team since 2021 and has 13 caps. He's 30 years old, so actually older than Mbemba, and he plays for Simba in Tanzania, a big team in Tanzania, and he was in Congo DR before that. The next candidate is at the possible level, Dylan Batu Binsika, and he plays for Saint Etienne in France and is 27 years old. He got his first cap in June 2023, so a bit late coming to the squad there. He was born in France, so perhaps hoping to get onto the French team, although I don't think he had any games with the underage French teams. He started 4 of their remaining 8 games then, and he was on the bench for 1 and not selected for just 1. However, he was injured for the last 2 matches, so a cloud of doubt hanging over Batu Binsika because of that. He was with Paris Saint-Germain Youth Club in France, I should say, actually for more than 10 years. And as I said, I think I said he plays for Saint Etienne in France. Okay, so we'll have to wait until part 2 to update information on whether his injury looks like he'll it'll keep him out of the cup. But he was heading towards being a starter. Started 4 of the first 5. Then he was not selected, then injured. So a possible starter. Rocky Bushiri doesn't look like a possible starter. He got his first appearance on the bench in June 2023 and started one of their remaining 8 games, but was on the bench for 3 and not selected for 4 others. But he was on the bench for both World Cup qualifying matches, and Bushiri, a possible candidate. He plays for Hibernian in Scotland and was with Norwich in England before that. He's 24 years old. The possible but unlikely candidate is Arsene Zola, and we won't go into detail on him. He missed the last 6 matches there, so he only has 2 caps and seems an unlikely candidate here. Okay, let's review the candidates. Actually, not that many, since they need 2 central defenders. We have definite candidate Chancel Mbemba, and then likely candidate Inonga, possible candidate Batu Benfica and Bushiri, and then possible but unlikely candidate Zola. Let's look at the positions. So among the players who started the 2022 World Cup qualifying playoff games, as well as the first 2 games of African Cup qualifying, only Mbemba remains, as we saw Mbemba currently listed as a defensive midfielder. Mbemba continued consistently, but his partner changed. So for the following 2 African Cup games, it was defensive midfielder Bokadi, who we'll meet shortly, and then for the last 2, Batu Benfica for there. Different players were tried out in the friendlies, and Ngonga emerged as Mbemba's partner in the first of the World Cup qualifying games in November. Batu Benfica is injured. In the second game, it was left back Kayembe partnering Mbemba. As I said, that's a strange decision, and there are many strange decisions in that cup. Anyway, Mbemba seems a clear starter, but his partner is undecided. Obviously, they're not really satisfied with their candidates because they are using out-of-position players sometimes. Batu Benfica looked like he had a good chance there, and I would guess he would be the partner if he recovers from injury. And I think he would be ahead of Ngonga there, but it could be an out-of-position player partnering Mbemba. Okay, let's move on to left backs. We begin by looking at the candidates. We have a likely candidate in Arthur Masuaku. And we have 3 possible candidates. We mentioned Joris Kayemba, playing as a centre-back in the last World Cup qualifier there. We have Vital Nsimba, and just those 2 candidates there. And outgoing is a player who was on the bench for game 1 in the 2019 African Cup, but then gained the starting position as the left back. That's Ngonda Muzinga, but he last appeared for the team in September 2022, so seems to be off the squad. I'll maybe put his name on the list, just in case. There's a thin sliver of a chance he'll come back. Let's look at the candidates then. Arthur Masuaku. He's been with the team since 2018. He has 18 caps and 2 goals and is 30 years old. And he recently moved from West Ham in England, where he was for 7 years, to Besiktas in Turkey. And he was a starter in the 2019 African Cup. However, after starting and finishing game 1, he was relegated to the bench for the rest of the tournament. Over the past 2 years, Masuaku has started 7 of their 18 games, and is subbed in for one and on the bench for one. But he's been struggling with injury a bit, out with 2 separate injuries for 4 games, and not selected for 5 others near the beginning of the period. So by no means a steady candidate for them. And now with an injury concern hanging over him. So actually, in general, he was becoming more involved until he was injured for 4 of the last 5 games, including the last 2 matches. So again, we'll have to update when we get closer to the Cup and see if it's going to threaten his participation here. If it is, we only have possible candidates to replace him. So Joris Kayembe got his first appearance on the bench in September 2023 and started 3, including the last 2 of their remaining 6 games, on the bench for 1 and not selected for 2 others. So it seems like he's the replacement, at least for the time being. So KMB was born in Belgium and plays for Genk in Belgium. The other candidate is Vital Nsimba, and he returned after, so he's been with the team since 2016, but only has 2 caps. And he returned after a 4.5-year absence in March 2022 and started 1 of their 17 games remaining, and was on the bench for 7 and injured for 2, but not selected for 8 matches. So doesn't seem like he's made big inroads into the team, even though he's recently taken a jump in his club affiliations, moving from Clermont in France to Bordeaux since 2022. So Vital Nsimba, a possible candidate here. And that's all that we have. Let's summarize then. We have Masuaku as a sorry, I put him as definite. He should be as likely. And then we have 2 candidates as possible, Joris Kayembe and Vital Nsimba. Let's look at the story over the past couple of years. So Muzinga, the player who I have seemingly off the squad now, was playing in the first 2 World Cup qualifying playoff games there for 2022, but he was replaced by Masuaka after taking a red card in the first of those games. Muzinga did come back and resume his position for the first African Cup qualifying game, but the first 2, I should say, but Masuaku took over under the new manager. However, with Masuaku injured recently, Kayembe has 2 starts, including the first World Cup qualifier, but kind of a hint that they weren't satisfied with that because it was right back Kalulu starting the second game. But once again, a lot of odd decisions made in that game, that second World Cup qualifier. So hard to say if that means that they're dissatisfied with the backup candidates here. Anyway, it probably would be Masuaku if he's fit for the Cup, and if not, the replacement seems undecided. Let's go over to right backs, where we don't have any definite or likely candidates, but we do have 4 possible candidates. So let's begin. We just mentioned Gideon Kalulu. He played the last of the World Cup qualifiers there, but on the left side, we have Jordan Ikoko, Jumercy Amale, and Brian Bayeye. Okay, let's. We have 2 who are seemingly off the squad. I'm just checking to see if they're worth mentioning. One of them is Mpeko Isama, because he was the starter in the previous Cup. Started and finished all 4 games as right back. However, he is 37 years old now, and last appeared in September 2021. So it doesn't seem like he would come back in. So it's got to be one of these players. So let's look at them. The first of the possible candidates, Gideon Kalulu, has been with the team since 2020, but only 7 caps in that time for the 27-year-old. He returned after a 15-month absence and started 5 of the remaining 12 games. Was injured for 2 and not selected for 5. So hasn't inserted himself that deeply into the squad. Kalulu was born in France and plays for Lorient in France. The second candidate, Jordan Ikoko, is the only one among these candidates with African Cup experience, tournament experience. However, it wasn't the last African Cup in 2019. It was in 2017 where he was a substitute. So he's been with the team since that time, 2017, but only 9 caps over that period. So 29-year-old who plays for Paphos in Cyprus. He's traveled kind of all over Europe. Well, actually only to Bulgaria. He was in France before that with Paris Saint-Germain in France, actually from 2013 to 16. So Jordan Ikoko has started 2 of their 18 games over the past 2 years. He was on the bench for 3 and not selected for 13 others, including the last 4 matches. So his kind of resume is not bad. His history with the team, that kind of bumps him up a notch. On participation alone, we would have him as possible, but unlikely. But we do have him as possible. Next, we have Due Mercy Amale, and he has been with the team since 2019. He's 25 years old and plays for Difa in Morocco, Difa El Jadidi. And he continued a string of starts in the fall of 2021 with 4 caps going into 2022. But he has since not been selected for 9 matches, including the last 6. So that is pretty much off the team. And so he was a regular starter, as I said, but decreasingly participated and not selected for the last 6. So I was just hesitating there because I might put him as a possible but unlikely candidate. He's been with the team since 2019, though, and has 23 caps. So he is the most experienced players among these. So I'm going to leave him where he is. The last candidate, Brian Bayeye, is brand new to the team since October 2023. He started 1 of their remaining 4 games and was on the bench for the last 2, not selected for 1 of those matches. So Brian Bayeye is just 23 years old and plays for Torino in Italy, having been born in France, but he's been with a few clubs in Italy since 2019 there. Brian Bayeye. So let's review the list and then the position. We have 4 possible candidates. So Gideon Kalulu, Jordan Ikoko, Due Mercy Amale, and Brian Bayeye. And seemingly off the squad is veteran Mpeko Isama, but it doesn't look like he'll come back at 37 years old. Let's talk about the position. So it was Amale, Due Mercy Amale in the Cup and for the first 5 African Cup qualifying games. Kalulu came in to start the last one. And Kalulu continued through 2 of the 3 friendlies and also the first World Cup qualifier. So it looked like he was kind of taking over the starting position from Imale. But again, we have the odd game in November. And in that game, we saw that he moved over to the left. And it was none of these players starting as the right back, but central defender Inonga or Baka. Hilok Inonga Baka starting as the right back. So strange things in that game. We can't really take that seriously as an indication of what was going to happen going into the cup. So we think Kalulu seems to be the starter here, but then using an out of position player in the final game suggests that they're not really satisfied with any of the candidates here. That's it for central defence, and we move on to the midfield, and we begin with defensive midfielders. So just a note, we did move Chancel Mbemba, who is coded as a defensive midfielder. We'll probably have to change that to central defence, where he's been playing recently. And that leaves us with a likely candidate in Ido Kayembe, and possible candidates in Mervale Bope or Bokadi, and we did mention him earlier there. Charles Pickle, and the third possible candidate, Omanuke Mfulu. And we have one possible but unlikely candidate in Peli Rudok Mpanzu. We do have several players who are off the squad, and I'll just mention one of them. That's Yusuf Mulumbu, captain of the team in the 2019 African Cup. But that was the last he played. He is 36 years old now, still playing club soccer for Orléans in France, but retired from international soccer, it seems. So we'll put him on the list just in case, but we don't expect to see him back. Let's take a look at our candidates here. Ido Kayembe has been with the team since 2019 with 18 caps and 1 goal, 25 years old, and plays for Watford in England since 2022. He was with Eupen in Belgium and Anderlecht in Belgium from 2017 to 20. And over the past 2 years, Kayembe started 6 of their 18 games, subbed in for 4, and was on the bench for the last 2. But he was also injured for 2 and not selected for 4. So we have Kayembe as a likely candidate here. Next is, I'm going to call him Bokadi because that's the name I'm most familiar with. Bokadi was a starter in the 2017 and 2019 African Cups. He's been with the team since 2016 with 29 caps and 1 goal. And Bokadi is 29 years old, playing for Standard Liège in Belgium since 2017. And was with TP Mazembe in Congo. I don't think I've mentioned that name before, but it is the biggest club in Congo DR. So over the past 2 years, Bokadi has started 2 of their 18 games, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2, and not selected for 13 others, including the last 6 matches. So he's unlikely in terms of participation, but his club affiliation and reputation with the team, or kind of history with the team, boost him up a notch. We have him as a likely candidate. Next is Charles Pickle. He got his first cap recently in September 2023 and started 4 of their remaining 6 games, subbed in for 1 and not selected for 1. So he plays for Cremonese in Italy. And he has been fielded for 5 of the 6 since his arrival. He actually was the scorer of the own goal in their most recent game, the loss in Sudan there. And finally, among the possible candidates, Omanuku Mfulu has been with the team since 2020, but only 5 caps in that time for the 29-year-old. And he was born in France and plays for Las Palmas in Spain since 2021. He earned a single cap in October 2020 and then wasn't seen for 2.5 years until he returned in June of 2023 and started 2 of the remaining 8 games, subbed in for 2 and injured for 2 and not selected for the last 2 matches. So Mfulu very much possible candidate, but not higher than that. The possible but unlikely candidate is Peli Rudok Mpanzu, and he was first subbed in. Sorry, he has been on the team since 2021, so he's been around for all of the 18 games here. He didn't start any of them, but he was subbed in for one, on the bench for one, and that's it. He was injured for 3 and not selected for 12, including the last 4 matches. But his club affiliations are good. He plays for Luton in England since 2014. And so recently went up to the Premier League with them, although I don't think he's used that much. Prior to that, he was with West Ham in England. So a decent resume, but an unlikely, possible but unlikely candidate here. Let's leave this list for now, because we're going to do central midfielders and then come back and look at both of them. We don't have a lot of central midfielders, just 2. The first one is at the possible level, and that's Samuel Mutusami. And the other at the possible level, Aaron Chibola. So let's take a closer look at them. Samuel Mutusami has been with the team since 2019 and 26 caps in that time. He's 27 years old and plays for Nantes in France since 2017. He started 11 of their 18 games there, subbed in for 1, on the bench for 2, and not selected for 4 others. That included the first 3 matches, so that's why we have him as a likely candidate, because he's been quite regular recently. He's actually coded Mutusami as an attacking midfielder, but he has played only as a central midfielder. And actually, one of my sources does list him as a central midfielder. So we'll kind of reconsider his designation after the Cup. The possible candidate, Aaron Chibola, has been with the team since 2018, but only 7 caps in that time, 1 goal, and he's 28 years old. He returned after a more than 3.5-year absence, and then started 5 of their remaining 11 games, subbed in for 1 and not selected for 4. So we have him as a possible candidate. He plays, recently moved to Hatta in UAE, and was with AEL Limassol in Cyprus and Gençlerbirliği in Turkey. I always have trouble with that name. He did play for Aston Villa in England from 2016 to 19 there. So Aaron Chibola, a possible candidate. Let's review all the candidates we have and then talk about the position. So for defensive midfielders, we have a likely candidate, Ido Kayembe, and possible candidates Bokadi, Pickle, and Mfulu, and possible but unlikely candidate Mpanzu. And central midfielder, just 2 candidates, likely candidate Samuel Mutusami, and possible candidate Aaron Chibola. And we'll look at this position in a narrative here. So it was Bastian. I don't think we have him on our list here, but Bastian and Kayembe played the 2 World Cup qualifying playoff games in 2020, in March 2022. Attacking midfielder Mutusami joined that rotation with Bastian, Kayembe, and Mutusami there. In the first 2 games of African Cup qualifying, he actually came in and replaced each of Bastian and Kayembe once. And only he, Mutusami, continued under the new manager. He was paired with Chibola for 3 games in a row, and then with Pickle in the last African Cup qualifying game. But Kayembe reappeared in the friendlies, which we don't take that seriously. In the first of the 2 World Cup 2026 qualifiers in November, it was Mutusami and Pickle playing the first game. And then in the second game, it was Chibola and Pickle paired with Mutusami on the bench. So really kind of a rotation there. That was not... some of the picks in that final game was strange, but that one wasn't. Mutusami seems a staple, or seemed a staple after June 2022, but was on the bench for 2 of the last 5 games. So it does seem a rotation between Mutusami, Pickle, and Chibola, although the latter 2 haven't played enough for us to really nominate them as starters. But we'll come to that when we get to the spotlight review. Let's move on to left and right midfielders. Again, these positions not used that much, and we didn't see Congo DR using a 4-3-3 formation, so their formations didn't require these positions. We actually have no candidates as left midfielders, and just one outgoing candidate on the right, Jacques Maghoma. He was I guess, a substitute in the 2017 and 2019 African Cups and hasn't appeared since the 2019 African Cup. So no current candidates in those 2 positions. So let's move on upfield to the left wingers. This upper left quadrant of the field includes wingers, attacking midfielders, and maybe even left forwards. Depending on the formation. So we have a likely candidate in Yohan Wissa and 2 possible candidates in Jonathan Okita and Aldo Kalulu. Let's take a look at these candidates. So Yohan Wissa actually plays all over the front line, but he is coded as a left winger, and he's been with the team since 2020 with 16 caps and 3 goals. He's 27 years old, and he plays for Brentford in England. He has done so since 2021, and having been born in France, was mostly with French teams prior to that, Lorient and Angers, teams of that level. He doesn't have any tournament experience then. Over the past 2 years, Wissa started 11 of their 18 games, subbed in for 3, and not selected for 4. So we consider him a likely candidate. The first possible candidate is Jonathan Okita, and he's been with the team since 2021. He started just 1 of their 18 games over the past 2 years, on the bench for 2, and injured for the first game, not selected for 14 matches, including the last 2. So Jonathan Okita, 27-year-old who plays for FC Zurich in Switzerland, a possible candidate. The other possible candidate is fairly new to the squad. He got his first cap in March 2023 and started 2 of their remaining 10 games, subbing in for 2 and on the bench for 1, but not selected for 4 matches. That includes 3 of the last 4 matches. So I'll just hang on a second. He played for Partizan in Serbia and is a possible candidate. I don't know if you hear my cat whining in the background, but I'm going to have to pause in a second and deal with that. But I will just finish this section on the left wingers and left attacking midfielders. A review of the list shows that we have 3 players, none of them with tournament experience. At the likely level, we have Yohan Wissa, and at the possible level, Okita and Kalulu. So in a summary of the position, it was Wissa in the first of the World Cup qualifying playoff games in March 2022, and Elia in the second. We're going to meet Elia. He's a right winger. We're going to meet him soon. Mostly it was Wissa after that. I don't want to overcomplicate things, but it was right winger Elia coming in for the last 2 African Cup qualifying games. But Wissa was often used elsewhere when not in the position. Three different players appeared in the friendlies, Elia being one of them. But Wisa returned for the last World Cup qualifying matches there, and those were the left attacking midfielder in the 4-2-3-1 formation, and then left winger in the 4-4-2 formation. Okay, I gotta pause and deal with my whinging cat. All right, the cat's needs are met, and we can continue on. I don't know if you were able to hear the meowing in the background there, but it was distracting me. Let's move on then to right wingers, and here we have a definite candidate. The player we just mentioned as sometimes starting as a left winger. It's Mishak Elia. I think he's sometimes called Michak, but I'll stick with Elia until I know better. We have two likely candidates as well in Theo Bongonda and in Silas Katomba, sometimes called Silas Mvumpa, but I will stick with Katomba here. And we have two possible candidates as well, Grady Diangana and Chadrick Akolo. So let's take a look at these candidates, beginning with Elia. And he's been with the team since 2016, 36 caps and 7 goals. He's 26 years old and plays for Young Boys in Switzerland. He, like many actually, was with TP Mazembe in Congo. Before that, he was a starter in the 2019 African Cup, but he lost his starting position in that cup and was a substitute after that, and actually was selected for the 2017 African Cup preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut. So Elia, over the past 2 years, has started 10 of their 18 games, subbed in for 4, and on the bench for 2, injured for 1. So just 2 matches that he wasn't selected for. And as we see, he sometimes starts on the left side. In fact, one of my sources has him coded as a secondary striker. Next, we have 2 likely candidates, the first of whom is Theo Bongonda, and he was born in Belgium and with the team since 2022 with 11 caps and 3 goals. He's 28 years old, and he plays for Spartak Moscow in Russia and was with Cadiz in Spain before that, and Genk in Belgium, where he was born. He got his first cap in February 2022 and started 7 of the remaining 18 games, subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 2. So 5 matches that he wasn't selected for. And he is a likely candidate, Theo Bongonda. Next, we have Silas Katompa, and he got his first cap in March 2023, started 2 of their remaining 10 games, but he was subbed in for 5. So he missed 3 matches, one of them due to injury, the other 2 non-selection. And he plays for Stuttgart in Germany since 2019. And we have him as a likely candidate. An interesting story about Katompa, and this actually explains his alternate name, Mvumpa. He revealed to his club Stuttgart that he was not. Sorry, it doesn't explain his other name. He revealed that he was not Silas Fundu. That was the name he was using under a false identity. His real name was Silas Katompa Mvumpa, and he was actually a year older than his false identity stated. So Stuttgart thought that coming clean with that the German FA would leave him unpunished, but they actually did ban him for 3 months and give him a fine for acting under a false identity. He said his agent forced him into that and was actually controlling him with that information. So interesting story there. Next, we have 2 possible candidates, Grady Diangana. So he got his first cap recently in October 2023 and started 1 of their remaining 4 games, subbed in for 1, on the bench for 1, and not selected for 1. So Diangana plays for West Brom in England, and he was with West Ham before that. from 2016 to 2020 and is 25 years old. So a possible candidate here. Chadwick Akolo is almost at the unlikely level. Here, he started 4 of their 18 games over the past 2 years, but he was not selected for the last 4 matches. That's the key detail. However, we keep him as a possible candidate here because he was selected for the African Cup in 2019 and actually gained a starting position for games 3 and 4 of that. So he plays for St. Gallen in Switzerland, Akolo, and has 23 caps and 2 goals since 2017. He's 28 years old. So 2 likely, 2 possible there. Let's review the list. At the definite level, we have Michak Elia, and then 2 possible candidates, Bongonda and Katumpa, and then 2 possible candidates in Diangana and Akolo. Let's look at the positions. So I'll just remind you that under the old manager, there were the 2 2022 World Cup qualifying playoff matches, which they lost to Morocco, and then the 2 disastrous African Cup qualifying matches that cost the manager his job. In those games, Akolo played 2 of those 4, and it was left winger Wissa and Elia in the other 2 here. Under the new manager, Elia continued only for 1 match though, and Bongonda started the remaining 3 African Cup qualifying matches. Elia returned, playing 2 of the 3 friendlies and the first World Cup qualifying match in November. However, in that odd selection of the last game, Diangana played it, and one of his many experiments in that game. So a bit uncertain here as to who the starter is going to be. Elia seems the best candidate, but we'll have to see when we get to the spotlight review who we actually fall on there. So let's move on to the forward positions, and we start with attacking midfielders. So here we have moved Samuel Mutusami. We moved him to central midfield, even though he's coded as attacking midfielder. That leaves us with 2 possible candidates and 1 possible but unlikely. Gail Katuka is the first possible candidate, and William Balekwisha, the other one. The possible but unlikely is Michi Mika, and we do have several outgoing players here who are worth mentioning. Paul Jose Mpoku started the first game in 2019. He lost his starting position, as it turns out, and he last played for the team in March 2022. Another fairly big name is Tresor Mputu. He was the captain of the team. He was the captain of the team in the past for the 2013 African Cup. Actually, by the time of the 2019 African Cup, he was drifting off the team. Only a sub, he was selected there. And he continued actually until March 2021 and has actually retired from soccer entirely in 2023. So Tresa Mputu will not appear, but we will put Paul Jose Mpoku on the list. He's only 31 years old and last appeared in March 2022. So a slim chance of him coming back. Let's look at the candidates that are more likely, though. The possible level, Gail Kakuta, has been with the team since 2017 with 19 caps and 3 goals and is 32 years old, playing for Amiens in France. Has not been selected for a tournament, but over the past 2 years started 4 of their 18 games and subbed in for 3 and was on the bench for 3. So he was not selected for 8 matches. So we give Katuka a possible chance of being selected. The other possible candidate is William Balekwisha. He was born in Belgium and plays for Standard Liège in Belgium. He was, He is new to the team since March 2023. Not that new. He started one of their 10 remaining games, subbed in for 3 and was on the bench for 3, and not selected for 3, but that includes the last 2 matches. So the 24-year-old Balikwisha, a possible candidate here. And finally, we have at the possible but unlikely level, Michi Mika. He's been with the team since 2016, so quite a while for the 27-year-old. He has 18 caps, but not so much recently. He started one of their 18 games and was subbed in for one other, and on the bench for one other, but not selected for 15 matches. So he plays in Congo DR for one of the other bigger teams, Saint Eloi, but he also played for TP Mazembe, as so many of them have. Okay, we're ready to summarize the position. Let's go over the list. So 2 possible candidates, Kakuta and Balikwisha, and 1 possible but unlikely candidate, Mika, and a player seemingly off the squad, Paul Jose Mpoku. So this position of attacking midfielder, or more specifically central attacking midfielder, only exists about half of the time in that 4-2-3-1 formation. When it's a 4-4-2 formation, it's generally central midfielders who play in the role. And it has been Kakuta in the position. So the ubiquitous Wissa appeared here once too, but it seems to be Kakuta's, but only when they use it. So he has only started 4 times there. Okay, let's move on to forwards. We don't have any secondary strikers for the list. In the centre forward position, we have likely candidate Cedric Bakambu and Fiston Mayele. And we have 2 possible candidates in Jackson Muleka and Simon Banza. And then some big names here, kind of off the squad. We have Jonathan Bolingi as a possible but unlikely candidate, but with an injury concern. And we also have Dieu-Mercier Mbokani, last appearing for the squad in March 2022. So we'll put him on the list, but he seems to be off the squad. Also, Junior Kabanga. No, he's long gone from the squad. I shouldn't have mentioned him, but I should mention Brit Asom Balonga. He was in the previous cup and played last in September 2021. So we'll only put Mbokana on the list there. I won't even explain why. We'll just look at the candidates here. So Cedric Bakambu is a veteran with the team since 2015 with 46 caps and 16 goals. And he's 32 years old, playing for Galatasaray in Turkey. And he has a pretty good resume with teams like Marseille and Villarreal. And he's been part of African Cup since 2017 as a starter there and in 2019. And he has started 7 of their 18 games over the past 2 years, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1, and not selected for 8 others. So that's kind of a possible level participation, but we bump him up 1 because A, he was called up more regularly recently, and B, because of his reputation both with the team and at the club affiliation level. So Cedric Bakambu, a likely candidate. Next we have Fiston Mayele, and he has been with the team since 2021 with 11 caps and 2 goals. A latecomer to the team because he's 29 years old, and he plays for Pyramids in Egypt. And having earned a single cap in 2021, he returned after a 2-year absence in March 2023 and started one of their games, but did sub in for 7 games and only one match that he was not selected for. So since his return, he's been steadily called up, and we have Mayele as a likely candidate. 2 possible candidates, the first of whom, Jackson Muleka, has been with the team since 2019 with 17 caps and 3 goals. He's 26 years old with a pretty good club resume. Besiktas in Turkey since 2022, and Standard Liège in Belgium prior to that. Over the past 2 years, Muleka has started 3 of their 18 games, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 3, but not selected for 10 matches, and that includes the last 2. But he was fielded for 3 matches before the last 2 when he was not selected. So all of that kind of balanced out to a possible level for us. And the second possible candidate, Simon Banza, is born in France, got his first cap in October 2023, and started 2 of their remaining 4 games, subbing in for 1 and on the bench for the other. So selected for all 4. Simon Banza making a late bid, and he plays for Braga in Portugal, and with Lens in France before that. He was born in France. And it's a late bid, so it's so new that we put it at the possible level. But given that he was selected for the last 4, he might be at the likely level. But we'll keep him where he is. Jonathan Bolingi is our possible but unlikely candidate. I won't give the bio on him because he started none of their 18 games over the past 2 years. He was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2, but he wasn't selected for 9. And actually, he was out with a collapsed lung for the last 5 matches. So I'm not sure whether that, how ongoing a situation that is. And so we'll really have to wait and see. But even still, he seems a possible but unlikely candidate, not being selected much. And even if he recovers, he may need kind of a bit more time than the cup would allow him. So Jonathan Bolingi, possible but unlikely. Let's review the list and then the position. So we have definite candidates, Cedric Makambu and Fiston Mayele. Mayele more, probably more of a substitute there. And possible candidates, Jackson Muleka and Simon Banza, making a late bid, perhaps even as a starter. And then possible but unlikely, Jonathan Bolingi, who is under an injury watch and seemingly off the squad, but with a slim chance of coming back in, due Mercy Mbokani there. And let's review the position. So in the first World Cup qualifying playoff game there in March 2022 for the 2022 World Cup, it was Due Mercier and Mbokani joining Bakambu in a 2-man forward line. And Mbokani probably didn't know that that would be his last start. Bakambu was the lone forward in the second of those matches, and in the African Cup qualifying games, it was Malago starting, partnered by Wisa in the second game. Bakambu regained his spot under the new manager and started 3 of the remaining 4 African Cup qualifying games, Wisa starting the other as Bakambu served out a red card suspension. Some experimentations in the friendlies. We saw Banza getting a start, and Bakambu returned, though, for the first of the World Cup qualifying games. But in the experiment that was the second World Cup qualifying game, it was Banza co-forwarding with right winger Bongonda. So another experimentation there, which we don't, again, expect to see as a sign of what to expect in the Cup. So we still see Bakambu as the only candidate as a starter here. And that is it. We are completed our list of candidates for the Cup. And we move on to section 3, and we begin that section for a bit of fun with a spotlight review, where we dare to pick the starters we think will be there for the cup. Let's begin with the manager, Sebastian de Saber. Well, he did do well to get them through African Cup qualifying, having lost 2 of their African Cup qualifying games. The previous manager was fired. He was brought in and won all 4, but we are a bit baffled by his selection for the last World Cup qualifying game, but we don't think that'll cost him his job, and we'll nominate him as a definite candidate. Goalkeeper, Lionel Mpasi. You're going to see a lot of names on the list that are in light grey here. That means they don't have any tournament experience. What it really means is a big overhaul of the African Cup 2019 squad. Not many of those players surviving through to this one. So Lionel Mpasi, a new goalkeeper, and we think he will be the starter. We had an interesting discussion about the secondary, the second string keeper, but that is not for the spotlight review. In central defense, we can only nominate one, Chancel Mbemba, as a definite starter. The other candidate, we actually think the recent newcomer Batu Binsika is probably the next best candidate, but he is under an injury concern, and so we're going to put both him and Enoch Inonga Baka, which I think is just mostly called Inonga. Going to put him as a possible, or I'd say likely, especially if Batu Binsika is injured. Okay, over to the left back position. Here too, we think Arthur Masuaka, but we don't put our full weight behind it because he too is under an injury concern. So if he's fit, Masuaku will be the man. If not, they have a big problem because they don't seem satisfied with any of their other candidates. Over on the right side, Gideon Kalulu, we think will be the starter. In the central midfield, it's very kind of uncertain, and we can only nominate one candidate kind of at the likely level, and that is Samuel Mutusami, who's actually coded as an attacking midfielder. So kind of lacking in candidates in that position as well. Over on the left wing, we think it will be Yohan Wissa, and if he's not the starter there, we think he will be the starter somewhere on the field, and so we're pretty confident about him being a starter. On the right wing, or right attacking midfielder, possibly even right forward, we have Michak Elia. We're talking about the kind of upper right quadrant of the field here. Michak Elia, we're fairly confident about. Central attacking midfield, well, they don't use formations all the time that has this position, so only have it about half the time. We haven't seen anyone consistent enough, even a player coded as an attacking midfielder, to think that they're going to be a starter. So we move on to forwards, and we have Cedric Bakambu as a likely candidate. He's only started 7 of their 18 games over the past couple of years, so we're not really confident about it, but he does seem really the only realistic candidate to nominate here. So that is it. That is the spotlight review, and we move on to the last order of business here, previewing part 2. So this is and always was part 1. In part 2, we're going to review the list that we compiled here and see how things turned out. We're also going to give an update on injuries, particularly important for Congo DR, as they have several players with injuries hanging over them, and we should be able to shed more light on whether that threatens their participation in the Cup. So that's the end of part 1, and we hope you join us for part 2. We originally planned to tag on our past, present and future plans for the mediacast, but we have instead decided to put a link to that 10-minute video in the show notes. It covers what we're working on and what we plan to do over the next 9 months. We would like to thank Pixabay and Alexei Ivanov of Mappa Music for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast.